Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambam Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Welcome to Easy Hinduism sharing today. So I'm Shreya, if you don't know me. So I'm just going to be introducing the speaker for today. One second. Dr. Chitra, I don't know if you can hear me. Let me go ahead. It's okay. I've muted her for a second while I introduce her. And today's, thank you all for coming. And I'll just be introducing Dr. Chitra, who's going to be doing today's sharing session. So this sharing session usually happens once a month in the last week of every month. So Hindu Center as an organization, we aim to help with a lot of spiritual growth for Hindus in Singapore in general. We try to inculcate bhakti. We also do seva, and we have programs to educate, Singaporeans and Hindus here. And we organize many different talks like what we are having today. We organize talks for young children like Bala Gurukulam. We also have one-on-one classes. So if you're keen on those, we have chanting classes, prayer sessions, yoga classes, and we also serve in the prisons as well through our Mitra program. If you're interested, I'll share more towards the end of today's sharing. But let me take a few moments to introduce our speaker today. Our speaker today is actually Dr. Chitra. She's going to be sharing on converging our inner and outer journeys, and some concepts from the Shastras and how the inner and outer journeys actually converge. And Dr. Chitra is actually a retired lecturer, and she's trained Hindu Center teacher. And she's been teaching in Hindu Center for, I believe, more than 10 years. And she's also written a book on 108 concepts on Hinduism, which is also sold in Hindu Center. Next time, if you're keen, and when the circuit breaker is over, feel free to buy it in Hindu Center. And before we start the sharing, I've already done the opening prayers. I would like all of you to welcome Dr. Chitra, and I'm going to go ahead and message her because she can't hear us. So just hold on while she can start. Dr. Chitra, you're muted.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Shreya, for that introduction. Namaste, good evening, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for attending today's session online. We at the Hindu Center really appreciate your presence. Now, the motivation for this talk came from my own observation. We attend a lot of talks, we attend workshops, we make copious notes, and I've always wondered how much of this we translate into everyday life and living. So this was the main driving force for this sharing this evening. So let me share my title slide with you. Give me a few seconds, please. So this is the title slide, as you can see. The title is Converging Our Outer and Inner Journeys of Life, Concepts from the Shastras. As you can see, I have defined life as a dual journey, the outer material, secular, transactional world, and the inner spiritual life. and the need for their convergence. This basically is my talk for today. Now, this is going to be the outline of my, it's not working. Sorry about that, some tech issues here. This is going to be the title, this is going to be the overview of my talk. We will look at the keywords in the title to begin with. I will explain what I mean by outer and inner journey and the questions that arise from it. And what is the approach I've used? I've used Jivana as a persona. I will be talking about that. And then we move on to concepts from the Bhagavad Gita that greatly helped Jivana on her two journeys. And then we will move on to convergence of the journeys. So let's look at the keywords in the title. Let's look at the keywords in the title. The Shastras here principally refer to the Vedas. The Vedas are the main scriptures on which Hinduism is based. Okay. However, I will be mainly referring to the Bhagavad Gita because it's known as the Veda Sara. It has the essence of the Vedas in it. Now, I chose the Bhagavad Gita because I assume that most of us will be familiar with the text. And also, it talks about you and me and our problems. And more importantly, it talks about solutions to our problems. Now, what do I mean by outer journey? The phrase outer journey refers to life in the secular material world that we operate in. Here we transact using our body and mind. This is here we work, we take care of our families, we have fun with friends and relatives, and we also try and lead a good life by caring, helping others, and avoiding wrongdoings as much as possible. Now, our inner journey is our spiritual journey because we pray, we meditate, we ruminate about life in this space. And we also reflect on life's many challenges here. Sometimes we even question them when we have problems. And this is where we do a lot of vichara or inquiry into oneself. And in the process, we create an inner sanctuary that only we are privy to. This becomes our own private space. But can we live life in this space all the time? We cannot, because the outside world, the world of action, the world of transaction beckons us, you know. We function in this outside world. But then at the same time, like I just said, we retreat into our spiritual world as well when we have to deal with life's challenges. This is what I mean when I say life is a dual journey for all of us. As we straddle between the two worlds, the two journeys can converge sometimes. But then my stand is that we need to consciously synchronize the two journeys for our inner peace and happiness. Okay, and today's sharing will focus on three questions. These are the three questions. How do the journeys, the outer and the inner journey, converge? What are the concepts from the Shastras that aid this convergence? What impact does the convergence have on a jiva straddling between the two journeys? Who is a jiva? Jiva in Hinduism refers to a human being who is infused with a life force. We are all jivas on this dual journey. And we will be revisiting these questions at the end of my sharing. Okay. Next, what is the approach I have used? As you can see, I will be introducing Jivana. Jivana is a persona, okay? And she represents all of us on this dual journey. As you can see, I have, you can see the significance of the name. Jivana is an expansion of Jiva. Okay, she too is a Jiva like all of us. And it's obvious why I've chosen the name. And she's a typical Singaporean, you know, enjoying material success with all her wants and needs satisfied. I will be answering her the three questions through her outer and inner world challenges, the way she straddled between the two and how she confronted the challenges and how she used this awareness of the concepts from the Shastras to converge the two worlds. Now, this is Jivana's outer and inner journey. First, we will look at the state of her mind, and then what was the trigger that set her off on her spiritual journey? What concepts from the Gita came to her rescue when she faced challenges? And then what was the impact of the convergence when she tried to converge the two worlds? And what is Jivana like now? And then we will revisit the three questions. So let's look at Jivana's life now, the early years, the later years. In the early years of life, Jivana, like all of us, frantically engaged in secular actions, having fun with friends, colleagues, families, having get-togethers. These were constant activities she indulged in. And then going to work, progressing, and achieving in her chosen field gave her immense professional satisfaction. And of course, she had to fulfill her other material wants as well, like buying a flat with her husband, having children, upgrading to a condo, and so on. These were all her material preoccupations, which she slowly acquired. What about the later years? As she aged and as maturity set in, she failed to see constant happiness in material objects and relationships. She had everything to be happy about, a happy home, a fulfilling career, children married, and having children of their own. She knew she had everything to be happy about, but she was still not happy. She was restless and seeking and searching for something. She wanted to be free. She wanted to escape from her current world and go to a remote, quiet place where she hoped she would find the answer to her restlessness. And what is interesting is that she did not even know what she wanted. But every time she wanted to go away, she felt dragged down by the demands of family and work. She was constantly reminded of her own duties and responsibilities, both at home and at work. However, sometimes later in her life, Jivana managed to escape and she attended a retreat. There were discourses and discussion on religion and spirituality. So, what led to the start of her spiritual journey? What was the trigger, that set her on this journey? Let's look at the trigger. We are spiritual beings caught in a human experience. We are human beings looking for a spiritual experience. This is what the Guru said during one of the lectures, and Jivana dutifully wrote it down. The phrase caught in a human experience and looking for a spiritual experience resonated within her and seemed to reflect her current situation. Let's take a look at Jivana's responses. Slide is not. Okay, this is Jivana's responses to the trigger. We are spiritual beings caught in a human experience. Am I caught in a trap? Is this the trap of human experience which does not seem to give me real happiness? How can I be a spiritual being when I have so many shortcomings? Is this why I feel this restlessness within me? Her response to human beings are looking for a spiritual experience. Is this why I feel this restlessness within me? What am I in search of? Is it the spiritual experiences that I'm looking for? She discussed her thoughts with the Guru at the retreat, who told Jivana that she needed a knowledge of the Shastras. She was specifically referred to the Bhagavad Gita. She was awakened to the truth that knowledge is the way to her journey within. That is, in this instance, knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita. So she turned to the Bhagavad Gita to find solutions for her life's challenges. Now let's take a look at the concepts from the Bhagavad Gita, which greatly helped Jivana build a spiritual base for her challenges. I have here the three gems, a problem solution approach, Malam, the concept of Ishvara and Bhakti, and Dharma. But before that, I have to say, she listened to the discourses of Pujya Swami Paramatma Nanda on Bhagavad Gita, and was introduced to these concepts. And these provided her with the guidance she needed. The three gems showed her the way to knowledge. A problem solution approach helped her to look for solutions. Malam led her to explore her inner self, and the concept of Ishvara and Bhakti led her to appreciate God. And lastly, Dharma guided her towards ethical living. Now let's look at these concepts in detail. Now, what are the three gems? The three gems are Shravanam, listening to religious discourses; Mananam, clarifying one's doubts; and Nididhyasanam, anchoring oneself in the knowledge gained. Now, Jivana was drawn to Shravanam at this juncture, so she constantly listened to Bhagavad Gita discourses on the 18 chapters by Swamiji. She listened to the introductory chapter wherein Swamiji describes the divine nature of all jivas and that ignorance prevented us from knowing our divinity. We all hanker for peace and happiness in the material world, he says, but that happiness in this world is short-lived. So Jivana began to think, could this be the reason for my restlessness? Am I searching for peace and happiness in the outer transitory world? Is this the wrong place? Now, Bhagavad Gita tells us that one needs to go deep within to realize that happiness, peace, and security are within each of us. And the only way to unlock this is through a knowledge of what Bhagavad Gita had to offer. Now, Jivana listened to the introductory chapters several times, and the more she listened, she realized that she had found an answer to her inner dilemma. She realized that she needed to travel within to cure her restlessness. So this was the start of her spiritual journey. What else did Bhagavad Gita reveal? Bhagavad Gita revealed a problem solution approach. Here I have Malam, Vikshepa, and Avaranam. And what is Malam? Malam is impurities within, that is our own behavioral traits, obstructing us from looking within. For example, being egoistic, will entrench us in the material world, and we will not be able to extricate ourselves, and we can never really go towards the spiritual world, okay? So Malam basically refers to the behavioral traits obstructing us. And the solution offered is Karma Yoga. Vikshepa means restlessness, physical restlessness. We need to constantly, we should be doing something. We know many people here around us who are like this, constantly restless. They need to keep doing something. Come Friday, they need to go out with their friends, go to the pub, have a few drinks. In short, these are extroverted people. And the solution for this is Upasana Yoga. And lastly, Avaranam, that is ignorance of our true divine self. This is basically Jnana Yoga. This is Vedanta. Okay. Now, the more she listened to the Gita chapters by Swami Paramatmananda and read the transcripts, the problem-solving approach that Bhagavad Gita took suited her needs. In fact, if you look at this slide, you can see it offers a total package for our spiritual living. Swamiji mentions impurities in personality, restlessness, and ignorance as obstacles to finding peace within us. Peace, security, and happiness within us. Remember, the material transactional world could not provide Jivana with this. You can see I have put Bhakti Yoga in the bracket there. According to the Gita lectures, Bhakti Yoga subsumes Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga and prepares one for Jnana Yoga. Now, this is a big area that I'm not going to go into, but suffice to know that Bhakti Yoga subsumes all the three yogas. What I'm going to be looking at today is mainly Karma Yoga, the different concepts in Karma Yoga, and also touch on Upasana Yoga. Even Karma Yoga, I've only chosen concepts that are relevant to Jivana's challenges. I'm not looking at the whole works. One of the obstacles to discover one's inner state, as we saw just now, is Malam. Now, what are the different types of Malam that the Gita mentions? Here we can see Kama, Desires, we all know that when we live in the material world, we have a lot of desires for material things. Okay, we want to acquire, 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 and acquire. And this can result in greed. Okay, wanting more things, wanting not just one house, but several houses, for instance. Now, when you cannot get what you want, anger can result. This is krodha. Greed is lobha, and kama is desire. And as a result of this anger, you know, you can become deluded. Having a deluded mind is imagining things that don't exist. For example, if you don't get the promotion you need, you begin to think, oh, my boss is very racist, you know, I'm Indian, that's why he didn't give me the promotion. That is a kind of delusion. Okay. And then there is jealousy and competitiveness. Jealousy, again, can come out of anger. You know, you look at your neighbor who has everything, drives a Lexus car, has a beautiful bungalow, you know, and then you say, you become very jealous. You know, why am I deprived of all these things? Okay. And then, of course, mada is arrogance or egoism. The I-ness, the minus. When you do something, you take credit for it. I know of people who have left many organizations, but who continue to say, when I was there, I did this, I initiated this, it was my project, and so on and so forth. Now, the sixfold obstacles, like I said earlier, entrench us into the material world. And once we are entrenched, the spiritual world is not even within our eyesight. So the description of Malam helped Jivna to reflect on her own obstructive qualities at the start of her spiritual journey. I'll come to this later. Next, let's look at Ishvara and Bhakti. Ishvara as source of creation, and Bhakti and Ishtadevata, and 4 types of Bhaktas. Now, Jivana's exposure to the Bhagavad Gita enhanced and deepened her knowledge of both Ishvara and Bhakti. She realized that obstructions in personality, physical and mental restlessness, and ignorance of self prevented people from recognizing and accepting God because you are so caught up in the material world. The Bhagavad Gita also says that God, or Ishvara, is the source and foundation of the entire creation. More importantly, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reveals his true form called Vishwarupam, as a form encompassing the whole universe, filling Arjuna with awe, as it is only then Arjuna finds out who Krishna really is. This understanding helped Jivana to see this whole universe as God's creation. This is why she realized that Hindus venerate all forms of life and nature, including the animals and plants, as also the mountains and rivers. Jivana also realized that we are part of this divinity called Ishvara. Next, Bhagavad Gita gave a new meaning to bhakti. Jivana generally approached God when she was mainly in need, but now she began to believe in loving devotion towards a personal God. She was drawn to this verse in the Bhagavad Gita from chapter 9, verse 26. The verse goes, "Whatever that is offered to me, a leaf, a flower, or fruit, or water with pure devotion, that sacred offering is dear to me." It set her on the path of her Ishtadevata, or favorite deity. She was also introduced to 4 types of bhaktas. Let me share a quote from the Gita again, chapter 7, verse 16. 4 types of men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the seeker of material wealth, the inquisitive, and the one who has already realized the knowledge of the Absolute. So here we have 4 types of bhaktas: Artha Bhakta, Artharthi, Jigyasu, and Jnani. Let's take a look at each of these. Artha is the distressed bhakta. These are people suffering from physical, mental, or emotional pain, and they feel shattered and hopeless, and they approach God to free them from their sufferings. Artharthi is the bhakta who approaches God for material wants. Okay, he's just applied for a condo, and then he seeks God's blessings and tells him that he would, he should be blessed with the condo. Okay, and then there's Jigyasu, the knowledge seeker, who wants to know more about God and seeks God's guidance to delve deeper into the subject. So his interest basically, is in knowledge. And lastly, we have the Jnani. The Jnani is the self-realized Bhakta. These are Bhaktas who have realized God and possess true knowledge about him as well. Now, the classification made Jivna realize that she was an Artha Bhakta. From this realization, this is the start, her awareness, appreciation, and understanding of Ishvara deepens. We will see that as we go along, and her faith in Ishvara is also enhanced. I will highlight this aspect as we travel through her in her journey. Her current approach to Bhakti as an Artha Bhakta had a profound influence on her own evolution of Bhakti. Next, we look at Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, Dharma as ethical living, Dharma as duty. Sanatana Dharma, or eternal laws of nature, is another name for Hinduism. I think many here would be aware of this. It refers to a universal order and stresses the importance of following the natural order or balance in life. The orderliness in the cosmos, as you can see, is amazing. Nobody presses the button for the sun to rise or for the sun to set. The cyclical movement of the planets is another example. So suffice to say that this order is a dharmic order. So when it comes to dharma as ethical living, it becomes important to follow this order. So dharma, ethical living, that is doing one's duty and what is right, are powerful concepts to lead a life of balance and discipline. Dharma as duty is a very strong concept that emerges in the Bhagavad Gita. This is exactly what Krishna reminds Arjuna. When Arjuna sees his kith and kin in the battlefield, he suddenly gets overpowered by emotion. Arjuna wants to leave the battlefield, but Lord Krishna reminds him of his duties as Kshatriya, which is to protect his land and to establish dharma or righteousness. So we can see dharma as a powerful concept can reside in one, helping one to discriminate between performing one's duties or not performing, and between what is right and what is wrong. So we've looked at all these concepts, and these concepts provided Jivana with the knowledge base from which to function in her dual journey. Going back to Malam, remember Malam, Jivana was drawn to the concept of Malam, okay, that is the obstacles in one's behavior that prevented one from realizing their divinity and innate happiness. Let's take a look at her understanding of her response to Malam. The Gita had reinforced the truth that we are all innately spiritual beings, but we are blind to this. So she came up with these reflective questions. Why am I blind to this truth? What are the impurities in my personality that are blinding me to this truth? That she then undertook a self-analysis. She analyzed her nature, identified the obstacles in her personality. What are the obstacles? These are the 4 obstacles. I've called them challenges, okay? The 4 obstacles are being reactive, having expectations, being a control freak, and being judgmental. Now, connecting to her inner self, and after a lot of reflection and introspection, Jivana came up with the following acronym as a plan of action to solve her challenges. FAST, F stands for face, A stands for accept, S for spiritual commitment, and T for transformation. So when our negative traits confront us, we need to face them, and we need to face them confidently. That's very important. For spiritual growth, confidence is the first step to confront the problem. Next would be to accept the weakness within us and not be in denial. It's very natural for human beings when our faults are pointed out, we immediately become defensive. We don't accept them. So you can see one needs courage for both confronting the weakness and accepting the weakness. Third S is a willingness to change or make a spiritual commitment to change. And finally, the transformation that is bound to take place if one adheres to the different aspects in this acronym. This is known as Jiva Prayatana. Prayatana means effort. And we must remember, all this did not happen overnight in Jivana's case. Every step required a lot of awareness and determination and a commitment to want to change one's behavior. So Jivana set out to confront her challenges. Challenge number one, being reactive. What is being reactive? What are its effects on others? What is the effect on oneself? And what is the solution? Being reactive means that one has little control over one's emotions. Instead, the emotions are dictated by someone or by something else or by a circumstance, or it could even be something that happened 2 months ago. But the person involved feels very, very insecure. And he or she also feels a need to justify one's behavior arising from one's ego. Because when you are told, you shouldn't be behaving like this, your ego comes in the way. In the process, he or she becomes defensive. Its effect on others. Now, as a result of this obstacle, members of the family could not reason out with Jivana. She would raise her voice and state that she was a victim and that everyone was against her. Instead of realizing the problem is within her, her attention was diverted to external circumstances and to the other people involved. In short, Jivana lost control over her reaction. She experienced moha or delusion because she has all these imaginations in her mind. Her thinking is clouded and she became very high-strung and very vocal. Let's take a look at the concepts from Bhagavad Gita. I will be explaining each of these concepts. First is Viveka, discrimination. That is Manasika, that's thought. Vachika is speech. Kayika is action. These are the different aspects, that sort of controlled her behavior. And the solution is in understanding karma. So what happened? As a result of her delusion, all that imagination in her head about accusing others and others are out to victimize her and so on and so forth, she lost the power to discriminate, which means Viveka Shakti, the power to discriminate between good and bad behavior. This is because when the mind crumbles and there is no clarity about one's role and about one's duty. This is known as Karpanya dosha, where we become weak mentally and are unable to use our discriminative ability. Even Arjuna experiences this in the Bhagavad Gita. Secondly, Vachika, that is speech. Kayika, action, and Manasika, thought, were not in tune with Dharma. When she behaves in a reactive manner, and there's a big scene in the family, that kind of behavior is not in tune with Dharma. Her behavior at work was less verbal, but the body language was not positive. The concept of karma, the law of cause and effect, came to her rescue. What are the karma principles? Knowledge and understanding of the principles of karma, changing mental state, awareness of dharma, linked karma. And understanding the law of karma, as we all know, karma literally means action and represents the universal principle of cause and effect. This is the law of karma. It's like a boomerang, what you throw, it comes back to you. So similarly, whatever we do comes back to us as papa or punya. The knowledge that papa is created not just through action, but also speech, vachika, and thought, manasika, impressed upon her the urgent need to control her free-flowing reactive thoughts, as they greatly influenced her words and action. Because thought dictates, the words, and then action follows. Jivana realized that she should control her thoughts, words, and deeds, and thus work on her current karma. All this knowledge helped to reduce the reactive nature of her behavior. Next is changing her mental state. To change her behavior, Karma Yoga tells us a proper attitude to the action is the first step. This means a willingness to change. For this understanding, the impact of the action is very important. Jivana realized the harm of her reactive behavior on both her and her loved ones. She realized she had to change her mental state and stop being reactive. And then she decided to take control of her manasthiti, that is, a state of mind, as she saw it as her main challenge. Initially, she resorted to simple breathing and meditation techniques, which come under Upasana Yoga. Awareness of Dharma link karma, Jivana's awareness of the link between Dharma and karma, that one's action should be driven by Dharma of doing what is right, can accrue punya, also helped her to control her reactive behavior. Now, all this processing that I'm talking about, we must remember was happening in the inner spiritual world, while the action and the reaction was an occurrence in the transactional world. So with a mindset prepared to confront her inner challenge of being reactive, let us look at Jivana's effort or prayatna. What was that? What was it she did? She abstained from vocalizing her thoughts and chanted the name of the Lord within. So you can see her bhakti progressing here. She probed into her own personality instead of accusing others by delving within. Remember, Bhagavad Gita tells her you have to go within to find out yourself. Introspected during long walks to come to terms with the situation and to resolve the problem. Remember, fast was her action plan. She used her Viveka Shakti to differentiate between good and bad thoughts, between what is right and wrong. Quieten her mind through meditation and reduce the number of thoughts by focusing on the quality of thoughts, that is, positive thoughts rather than negative thoughts. So we can see that action backed up my knowledge of Karma Yoga and karma principles enabled Jivana to convert her weakness into emotional strength. The result, less friction at home and more inner peace arising from her changed behavior. Thus, repeated good behavior, when integrated, becomes a way of life thanks to the concepts from the Shastras in Jivana's case. Let's move on to the next challenge, which is having expectations. In this slide, I have samsara and the characteristics of samsara that I will be talking about. I'll mention each of those when I explain. And then there's karma yoga, the concepts of arpana buddhi and prasada buddhi. Now, samsara in Hinduism refers to the cycle of birth and death that a jiva undergoes. When we say he or she is caught in samsara, we generally refer to these problems of samsara. Attachment, that is raga, likes or attachment. Dislikes is dvesha. Grief is shoka, delusion is moha. Now, let's look at Jivana's situation, okay? Now, as a professional, she was extremely devoted to her work, very focused and hardworking, and strived hard to satisfy the key performance indicators at the workplace. So she did her job very well with a lot of commitment, very duty-bound, etc. But she had expectations as well, which is why she's disappointed and internally disturbed when her expectations are not satisfied. She was not happy with the bonus given as compared to the others, was also dejected that she did not get the coveted promotion. It eluded her again. She worried and agonized, causing her stress and sleeplessness. This is a typical case of attachment to the work and expectation of the outcomes, and as a result, shoka follows. Momentarily, she was angry and developed a strong dislike for her boss, which is dvesha. She feels discriminated against and even came to believe it was true. She believed that the boss was basically racist, and this could be moha or delusion, where the mind goes on a whirlwind in imagination, unable to discriminate between what is truth, what is the truth and what is the untruth, what is right and what is wrong. It also shows a lack of viveka or discrimination. What is the solution? Jivana needs to transform this binding karma of attachment into a liberating karma by understanding that one has choice and control in performing one's actions, but not on the results. So she has to give up ownership and doership, the I-ness and the minus and the meanness, and that I am the one who is doing everything. All this has to disappear during the course of doing the action. So knowledge of Karma Yoga came to her rescue again. Jivana found that when you're centered in this knowledge, it can direct you and make your life meaningful. So here we have the concepts of Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi. Arpana Buddhi tells you, develop right attitude to work, treat work as worship, dedicate your actions to the Lord without any inner disturbance, give up doership. And this helps to focus one's energy on the action than the results. More important, let it be devoid of karma pala, that is fruit of your actions, basically referring to results or expectations. What about prasada buddhi? Prasada buddhi tells you, accept results as prasada from the Lord and move on in life. If the prasada is tasty, you show gratitude and strive to do better. If what you've received is is unfavorable to you, one asks for grace and guidance to learn from the whole experience. So being attached to the results can help one single-mindedly focus on the quality of the action instead of being worried about the results. This way, the mind is more stable. Now, when all this knowledge resides within us as Viveka Shakti, it can really guide the individual. This attitude to work is one of dedication and acceptance, and the shift in mindset greatly enhanced Jivana's quality of work. This awareness brought about detachment, made her work more sacred because now for her, work has become worship. It provided wisdom and inspiration on how to act from this new spiritual perspective. The result, recognition and accolades came, but of course, in their own time. So let me share a quote on Karma Yoga from Bhagavad Gita, which greatly inspired Jivana. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of the activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Chapter 3, verse 19. Now we move on to challenge 3, being a control freak. Here we will look at Jivana as a mother, the children's reactions, distinction between attachment and love. Remember, I told you she was very, very dedicated to her profession. Jivana was also a doting mother, like many of the mothers here. Making sacrifices for her children came very naturally to her. She invested a lot of time and energy, physical, mental, emotional energy in the children's studies and other pursuits. Now, this did not subside when they got married and had children of their own. She was still proactive, anticipated their needs, told them what to do, devotedly helped with the grandchildren, and even gave instructions to the helpers on what they should do. So you can imagine what were the children's reactions. Amma, we are not kids anymore. Let us manage our own lives. Don't interfere, please. Let us make mistakes and learn, and so on. So, how did Jivana feel? Jivana was devastated. I'm telling all stories. Her intention to help, according to her, was misunderstood. She felt used, unwanted, unloved, rejected, misunderstood, and was overwhelmed with self-pity. As a result, she was in a state of moha with no clarity in thinking whatsoever. So what was the reason for all this? Remember, attachment leads to sadness, and this in turn causes delusion. It was not surprising that Jivana was consumed by self-pity and she was extremely dejected. This prevented her from seeing her problems clearly. What was the solution? The concept of Shravanam came to Jivana's rescue. She listened to chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. She listened and re-listened to the explanation on Arjuna's grief in the battle of Kurukshetra. And she understood that all that the agitation within her arose because of this attachment that she had. In the case of Arjuna, he was very attached to his kith and kin. He who wanted to fight the war with a vengeance against the Kauravas suddenly loses his focus due to this attachment. And this understanding greatly helped Jivana. So you have the distinction between attachment and love, as explained in the Gita, helped clarify Jivana's mind. She constantly reflected on these aspects of attachment and love and slowly came to accept that attachment must be binding and limiting. If it can cause so much misery and hurt, remember her own experience, so she realized it has its limitations. So this knowledge derived gradually helped her to understand her plight and the action she needs to take. Let us see what Bhagavad Gita says about attachment and love. Love, as you can see, is knowledge-based, based on the knowledge from your own experience, and also from the Bhagavad Gita, based on Arjuna's dilemma. Okay, and so this knowledge, when you have this knowledge, that itself can make you lean more towards love. And you can see, love is everything that attachment is not. Attachment is emotion-based. Love is not emotion-based, it's knowledge-based. Attachment is conditional, you invest so much energy in your work, in your children, there is binding expectations. But love is unconditional, there is no expectation there. Attachment can create psychological problems. I know of mothers who are extremely attached to their children, and when they go overseas to study, they are in total limbo. They go into depression and constantly agonize about the children. Whereas love is free of psychological problems. Attachment binds you with expectations and dependence, whereas love gives you freedom as it is non-binding. So, and another thing is that attachment is more human, whereas love is more spiritually inclined. Remember, we are all innately divine, and a spiritual response is very important for our own growth as well. So, how do we translate all this knowledge into action? What did Jivana do? Initially, she practiced maunam, that is no talking whatsoever, and abstained from messaging the children during her reflective phase. She went into a cocoon. She avoided messaging, especially giving instructions to her children and helpers. She made a conscious effort to do this. It's not easy. This has been her practice, so she had to refrain from doing that. She replaced attachment with love, which means she functioned more with an attitude of giving, caring, and assisting. I think this is the most important remedy for attachment, where you function with this kind of attitude, where you tell yourself, out of my own volition, I'm doing this for my children, my grandchildren, let there be no expectations. So she had no expectations, hence no binding attachment. So what was the outcome? She experienced inner peace and joy, and today is a happy grandmother, as the focus of her love are mainly her grandchildren. More importantly, she has assimilated and experienced the truth that love without attachment is all giving, caring, unselfish, unconditional, because there are no binding expectations, and more importantly, nagging emotions of insecurity. Remember, she was very, very insecure and agitated. She wanted acceptance from the children. She wanted admiration from the children, and so on and so forth. Now she experiences an unsullied happiness, which she cherishes. However, even now, when there is a tinge of attachment by way of worry, she just prays to God and asks Him to guide her children. She thus enjoys the family bonds without the bondage of attachment. So take note of her bhakti now. She's slowly getting closer and closer to God. Okay. Next, challenge 4, being judgmental. Jivana's situation and what are the solutions? Creating karma and using dharma. What was the situation? There was one particular situation at work when Jivana was leading a team, and because she was put in charge of a project, and she was working under pressure to very tight deadlines. One of her team members asked her to give her a lower load due to some family difficulties at home. But Jivana was very unhappy about this because she was more focused on her tight deadlines, and concluded this person was a slacker, a shirker, without even delving deeper into the issue. She also felt that it could be that the person did not want to take instructions from her. She was reminded of this incident much later when she herself had been wrongly judged by her superior. So her own experience taught her not to be judgmental. Now, judging others based on an incident or a behavior at one point in time, or coming to one's own conclusion about the person, is a tendency that all human beings have. Jivana tried to address this by reminding herself that such judgmental statements arise in the mind and can contribute to negative karma. So her understanding of karma greatly helped her in this instance. Secondly, remember her concept of dharma. She felt it's not morally right to sit in judgment on what someone says or does. It is adharma to come to conclusions without proper evidence. And these were her thought processes in dealing with this issue. Sorry. Who am I to judge someone else's behavior? Am I perfect? Is it not unethical? There must be a reason why he or she behaved like this. It could be a one-off behavior. Please give them the benefit of the doubt instead of passing judgment based on perceptions. Watch your thoughts, and when tendency to pass judgments arise, it is good to nip it in the bud. So this is how she dealt with this problem. Let's move on to, so we've looked at the 4 challenges she faced, how she confronted them, how she dealt with them, and with knowledge from the Shastras. Okay. Next, we move on to impact on Jivana. Jivana has walked the 2 journeys. She's seen challenges in the material world, and using the concepts from the Shastras, she sort of sorted out these challenges in her spiritual world, and this is what bridged the spiritual and the material world, that is her knowledge from the Shastras. So what was the impact of this convergence on Jivana? Here we have Viveka and Vairagya. Viveka is discrimination and Vairagya is dispassion. I will talk about that. Bhagavad Gita as a guide to intelligent living. Jivana became more Shastra-centered and her bhakti enhanced greatly. So we have journeyed with Jivana through her different issues. She converged her material and spiritual journeys. She developed a spiritual knowledge base. I think this is what is important, from which she could function. So what was the impact? Let's look at Viveka and Vairagya. Viveka is discrimination and Vairagya is dispassion. The greatest change in Jivana is the development of both Viveka and Vairagya. The material transactional world could not give her security, peace, and happiness. Her experience, and in particular through her challenges, she associated her experience with the material world with mental pain. And she realized it caused dependence, and it also drained her senses. So she realized all that security, peace, and happiness is within her and not on others. And she constantly used this understanding as a discriminatory process in her decision making, which gave her inner peace. She took charge of her inner spiritual journey. Her newfound experience of the material world also led to vairagya, that's dispassion. She found dispassion creeping within. Her yearning for anything material had reduced because she now knows that the joy in this world is short-lived, in the material world is short-lived. She felt detached towards material objects. The Gucci brand was no longer attractive to her. So with discrimination and dispassion working hand in hand, Jivana experiences an inner peace and calm. Next is Bhagavad Gita as a guide to inner living. Jivana found that Bhagavad Gita had answers to all of life's issues. All she had to do was listen to the discourses of the different chapters over and over again and discover more gems which continue to give her long-lasting joy. So based on the knowledge she derived from the Bhagavad Gita, she ironed out all her internal challenges, and this has resulted in inner peace and happiness. So the first item here is, concept here is karma through thought, word, and deed. The concept of karma is a very powerful tool where Jivana took control of her mental state by directing her thoughts. Thought processes being invisible are generally ignored, but they can be powerful and cause negative karma. So she became more sensitive to her thoughts and to steer them in the right direction. As a result, her viveka or discriminating power has sharpened. Next, freedom from a chaotic mind. Jivana now understood how powerful the mind is. She saw the mind as the seat for all problems. This is where thoughts originate. Thoughts instigate words, followed by deeds. And using this knowledge base about the capacity of the mind, she strongly willed to control it. The result, she's a calmer person today. Last, we have work as worship. The concept of work as worship has helped her to stay focused on the action rather than on the results, giving her the inner strength to move on with a dedicated focus in whatever she did. The attitude of Arpana and Prasadabuddhi have helped her to reduce doership. And as a result, she has begun to enjoy the work process by dedicating it to God or Ishvara rather than the end product, the results. Next, remember, she became Shastra-centered. The concepts of the Bhagavad Gita have now become an anchor in her daily life, and this gives her a quiet confidence. We saw how Shravanam, that is listening to Bhagavad Gita discourses, helped build a knowledge base of the various concepts, and then being able to operate from that knowledge base, that is Nididhyasanam, became an armor to counter life's challenges. This gave her a lot of security and confidence, as she now had a scripture to turn to when challenges arose. Perhaps the greatest change in Jivana now is that from an Artha Bhakta who approached the Lord when she was mentally disturbed, she's also a Jigyasu who seeks his grace and guidance for enhanced learning from the Shastras. Okay, so her Shraddha in the scriptures had increased. Next, we have enhanced bhakti. Faith in God had now become her pillar of strength. The concept of God as the universe and as one compassionate and welcoming to the devotees has brought her closer to her personal God. And also she experiences an enhanced faith or bhakti in God and sees him as a partner in all her spiritual endeavors. Work as worship perhaps has led her on this path. She's also fully convinced that if things do not go her way, there is a lesson to be learned and it is meant for her spiritual evolution. And she's very steadfast in this understanding. Concept of Ishvara, centered in the knowledge of God encompassing the whole universe, Jivana now enjoys the divinity around her in its various forms, especially nature and her varied manifestations. These give her immense, incomparable joy. And in this current joyous state, she experiences a deep sense of gratitude to be able to enjoy all these around her. So, and we know a grateful heart is always a happy heart. She has also begun to see the universe as a cosmic whole, and that all of us are in this journey together. A byproduct of is that Jivana experiences a lot of sympathy and empathy for people and their problems. This means showing more care and concern, and more importantly, praying for the affected people. So based on what I have shared so far, we can see the impact that convergence has had on Jivana. Now, let's look at Jivana as she is now. What are her thoughts? Jivana believes, she calls herself a work in progress. She says she will continue in this journey of self-awareness using the Shastras, and God has her guide both in the material and spiritual world. She admits she's not perfect. In case some of us think, she must be very perfect. She admits she's not perfect. And the tendency to be judgmental still raises its head, but she's learning to control her mind. She realizes the importance of exercising mind control from her journey, straddling between the two worlds. The knowledge that all humanity is connected through divinity has been very powerful in revealing the unity in diversity and the need to be less judgmental and forgiving. An area she would like to explore is meditation as a tool to quieten her mind, because she feels that she would benefit from that. So, feeling very confident and secure, and with the help of the 4Ds she has acquired. What are the 4Ds? Devotion to God, deep Shraddha in the Shastras, a desire for learning and discipline. She is looking forward to continuing her journey of convergence. When I started, I said we will be revisiting these 3 questions. How do the 2 journeys, the outer and inner, converge? What are the concepts from the Shastras that aid this convergence? What impact does the convergence have on a jiva straddling between the 2 journeys? I'm not going to answer any of these questions because I'm assuming and hoping, and I'm quite clear that I've answered all these 3 questions as we journeyed through Jivana's life's challenges. I also started by saying that our life is a dual journey, the outer and the inner. So we have traveled with her and seen how she straddled and how she bridged the 2 worlds. I also said we are all Jivanas on this dual journey. So what are the takeaways for all of us? The concepts from the Bhagavad Gita can provide a strong knowledge base, which we've seen in Jivana's case, and it can really guide us in the inner spiritual world and assist the convergence. I think this is more important. Controlling one's mind, which is the seat of all problems, emerges as a very, very powerful concept. Practicing Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi and treating work as worship can provide inner stability. All this requires a lot of effort, focus, and determination. But convergence can result in a happy, fulfilling, and peaceful life. On that positive note, let me end the session. Thank you all very much for patiently listening to me for almost an hour, maybe a bit over an hour. Okay, so on this positive note, we will end the session. We move on to participation and discussion time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. If you can hear me, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Speaker.
Can you hear me, Dr. Chitra?
Okay.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Shreya, clearly.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing talk because I really loved the acronyms and I could relate to it. And I'm sure everyone here as well would say the same. So let's open up for some questions. And if you have any comments, feel free to mention. if you're sharing a comment or a question. And you can raise your hand using the Zoom panel, or you can just unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment. Just make sure that you mention what you're going to say.
No questions? No questions.
Okay, so Dr. Chitra, there's a question in the chat, so I'm going to read it to you,
Sure.
and you can answer. Love and attachment are intertwined, as without one there is no the other, as love creates attachment and attachment creates love too. What is your view?
Okay. Like I said in my sharing, attachment is not wrong. You can be attached, but don't be overly attached. Okay. Everything starts off as love. You love your family, you love your children, but then one has to be guarded about excessive. When love is excessive, it can turn into attachment, and that is where we need to be guarded. And when it is excessive, it can cause a lot of pain and agony within, because expectations are there as well. Okay, so do love, but watch out when it sort of crosses the border. It cannot become an attachment. The challenge is the attachment, but love, as I have explained, is more spiritual. It is giving, giving, and giving. It is not expecting or taking anything in return.
Any other questions or comments?
Should I call out names?
Maybe you should. I think they're shy.
No, it's okay. The questions, the sharing should trigger the questions. Yeah.
For sure.
Just one small question, yeah.
Yeah.
I see that you're recording this whole thing. Do we
Yes.
get this later, or how is it? I mean, just for
Shreya,
our
you have to answer that.
So we are not actually sharing this currently, like our Easy Hinduism talks are not being shared, but if you can drop us an email, we are recording it, we can send you the recording.
Okay, perfect. And maybe the reason I asked, because we can, I mean, we can hear it later, and then we can revise the whatever was taught.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe just one more suggestion.
Yes,
Maybe
Ravi.
you can actually convert this into an audiobook, upload it across to Audible also. It is,
Audiobook?
yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay.
I guess.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the
Thank
suggestion.
you for your
Maybe in the
suggestion.
future.
Okay. Yeah.
It's indeed very nice. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people
Okay.
who
We'll
listening
think
to it.
of that. Thank you for your suggestion.
Yeah.
Dr. Chitra,
Ah,
Santa here. Was
yes, Shanta.
an awakening presentation indeed. It
Thank you. Thank
resonated
you for
very well
coming,
with me, I
Shanta.
would say, really. Thank you so
Okay.
much. I gained so much from this presentation. I think, it's going to start my spiritual journey, I think. Yeah, so
Okay.
it has been an awakening presentation indeed. And a
Yeah.
lot of things that you said really resonates very well with what is really happening in our lives, I would say.
Yes.
So
I know
think,
you are a mother as well, so
and a
you would
grandma
have
as well.
identified, and
So
a grandma
yeah,
as well. Yes.
yeah. So the awareness really has triggered me very much.
Yes.
So I'm very grateful for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Shanta. Thank you for making time
Sure.
and being here.
Sure, I will. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
There is a comment. Sorry, I'm just going to read it out. before we go to Madhi. There's Varun said he loved the storytelling format that you shared, like the persona. I
Okay.
think he
Yeah.
loved it. It's just he shared that.
Okay.
So
Thank you,
I think
Varun. Thank you. I thought a lot about it, so I'm glad it worked.
Hi, Dr. Chitra. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think
Yes.
the choice of using Jivana worked very well for us to follow. Thank you for that. I have just one question in my mind in terms of for Jivana to take on the search and spiritual journey was restlessness. A lot of us, I've heard a lot of cases where sometimes it takes a crisis in your life
Yes.
to trigger you to that. So I just want to hear your view in terms of what you've
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah. Each one of us is different, you know. There are different triggers in our environment. In Jeevana's case, it was restlessness. In someone else's case, it could be a tragedy that has happened that could serve as a trigger. So the trigger can be anything in life, and it can set us off on the spiritual path. So it varies from individual to individual. That's what I'm trying to say. Does that help in any way?
It does, but I just think at what level of restlessness that it triggers you to, because we all grew up with the presence of bhakti, and so there's a trigger point that pushes you to do that. So
Yes.
I just wondered from your
Yeah,
experience.
I don't know from what I know about Jivana, okay, it is a kind of a push factor, you know. It really pushes you to want to find out, to want to learn, to you know, and you are constantly looking for opportunities to get away from the situation and to reflect and then find answers. So it's very hard to explain. It's basically, I would say, a push factor that sends you out to look and search for things.
Just thank you for that. The second part of my question is whether a person in this current birth takes on a spiritual journey, it's also his karma, past karma.
Definitely, definitely. I would think even to embark on this spiritual journey, you would need God's grace. Okay? And sometimes when challenges come, it's good to seek God's grace, and then the path opens for us. So it is past karma to some extent, I would think, to be set on this path. Okay? So I would think the karma is definitely there from the previous birth. Karma and God's grace, I would think. I would believe more in God's grace. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Chitra, there's some questions in the chat, so I'll read it out to you.
Okay.
There's a question from Shiva. How do you know when to stop the giving, as that is causing the over-attachment?
When to stop the giving? When you get a few blows from your children, and when it is not appreciated, you go off into your cocoon, you reflect and ask yourself, maybe you decide how much you want to give to begin with. Secondly, after giving, as you're giving also, or even before giving, tell yourself, I should not have any expectations. I am giving of my own volition, of my own love. Okay, so this is where I find Jivana's reflections very, very important. You notice every challenge, she goes into a reflective mode, questions herself, questions her inadequacies, questions her actions, questions her mindset. So my answer would be, instead of saying, do this, 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 reflect, question yourself, look at your own situation and see what you need to do, which is what I would do. Yeah. There is no standard answer, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. There is also one more question. Attachment to your child after he goes away from you to God. How do you overcome that attachment?
This is after he goes to God, is it? After
Yeah.
he passes
Yeah.
on. Okay. Now I have to put myself in your shoes to be able to answer this question. So what I would tell God was, God, give him to me, him or her to me, That was a blessing. I enjoyed the child as long as he was with me. There must be a reason why God is taken him away. And once we sort of, and we know once someone passes away, they've passed on to a different world. So I would look at it as there was a purpose why the child was given to me. There is a purpose as to why the child was taken away from me. Okay. Now it's not easy, but then gradually you learn to accept, and then you tell yourself he's in a better place than he would have been here perhaps, and you have to come to terms with it. That's the way I would look at it.
Thank you so much for the answers. There is a lot of comments that people have shared and how much they loved your presentation. I'm not going to read everything. There's a lot, so I will send it to you. But if you want to share, if there are any other questions, like anyone wants to go ahead or share any comments before we close it off.
If anybody wants to have a chat with me or talk to me more on certain areas, feel free to contact me. Shreya has my contact number. We can talk more in private perhaps. So I'm quite happy to engage. Yeah, some of you if you have challenges.
Ravi Shankar, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Why does Jivana, why does she, after she becomes old, she starts to get all the bhakti and all those stuff? Why can't she get it earlier?
Yeah, we all wish we got these things earlier, Ravi Shankar, because sometimes I also think, why didn't I go for all this knowledge earlier? I would have been a better person, but then I think we're basically not ready for it, When we are young, we are very, very busy with our materialistic goals in life, getting securities, getting a house, working hard, making money. That is our focus. And then the children come, we focus on the children, we balance work and home, So there is really, we are so entrenched in the material world. Okay, in the material secular world, in the transaction world. So we hardly think about it. But there could be a situation in life that can trigger you, that can make you ask questions about what's happening in your life, So that could be the start of the spiritual journey. It can vary for each individual. For some, it can come as early as 10 years, For some, it can come at 30. Some others, it doesn't even come. So it varies from individual to individual.
Thank you. Yep.
Dr. Chitra, there's more questions. I am going to read out to you again in the chat. So how can we make younger generation, our children, realize it earlier than realize themselves at a later stage?
I'm sure my father asked this question of his children as well. Okay. I think it's very hard for me to answer simply because you have to be ready. Simply because we have to be ready for it, and if we are not ready, it won't happen. I remember my father telling me a whole lot of things when I was young. Some of it resonates now. It didn't resonate then. We can try. Only thing is with younger children, we don't tell them to do this and that, they don't like it. Make it participatory. When you do something, let them participate with you. Tell them why you are doing what you're doing. For example, when my grandson comes, I tell him stories about my prayer room, about the gods, and so on and so forth. So we have to inculcate this interest in them, walk with them, guide them, talk to them. It will not happen on its own. Telling is not going to help. That is the last thing we need to do, okay? Show them in action, let them participate, and somewhere they will make a connection. When I look back at my childhood, I made a few connections when I was involved in what was happening around, not when I was told what to do. So that is where I come from. So I believe in that.
I think it's also a great opportunity for you to send your children. I think I love your idea,
Yes,
Dr. Chitra, to like telling them stories, but also sending them to classes or any
yes,
opportunity
yes,
where they can get involved in some sort of learning at a very young age, whether
yeah,
it is, learning Sanskrit or learning bhajans or singing or yeah, sending them to Hindu Center, for example. You can also do that, but lots of opportunities there. We also have about two more questions and then we'll close it off. What are your thoughts on various groups like Isha Yoga, Hare Krishna, and so on in terms of achieving life's goals?
I think it doesn't matter which organization or which personality you turn to. It really doesn't matter. But personally, for me, maybe because of my academic background, I like the Shastras because they are sort of a foundation. They lay a foundation. And I can draw on that foundation, on that basics, the basics are very important. It's nice to listen to Sadhguru, what he says, etc. But then this is my personal opinion, okay, please. But I prefer to listen to Swami Paramatmananda or Swami Omkarananda because they ground whatever they say in the Shastras. When you know where the source of the knowledge is, you appreciate it that much more. It is more credible, it's more authentic, and it's more valid. But that's because of my background. It doesn't matter who you follow your heart. And if what they say resonates, and if it helps you to become a better human being, go for it. That is all I would say.
Last question that I'm going to read to you. Swami Vivekananda says, "This life is short. The vanities of the world are transient. They alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive." Your comment on this, as living for others creates attachment to, and it is good. Good. It is a good sort. It is of the good sort. Yeah.
Living for others, I'm going to latch on to that phrase, okay? Um, Living for others, it's a kind of vocation. It sounds like a vocation to me where you're literally living for other people. You've taken it as a life's calling, okay? But that is fine. But for me, living for others could also mean making time for others, helping them in your own little world that you live in. It is also good to make time for others, help others out, see how you can reach out to them, okay? So living for others is a vocation that you can follow, like Swami Vivekananda says. We have many, many famous personalities. Mother Teresa comes to my mind, who literally lived for others. Okay, but as normal human beings, I don't know whether we can live for others, but we can definitely be helpful to others, be sensitive to others' needs, and help them as much as we can.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. It was really I think for me personally, it was very, very, very interesting, and I learned a lot from you today. And I'm sure everyone here feels the same way. And all the questions that you answered as well, you gave us really a lot of practical examples on how we can move forward with our own attachments, with our own um, problems in our life and challenges. Thank you for that. Let's go ahead and do the closing prayers. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Yeah.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Let me just. Okay. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavat. Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Sarve santu niramayaha. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
That's it, right?
Yep. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. Very, very
Thank
good
you.
talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. It's really good.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good
Bye,
night.
good night. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chitra. Nice talk. Bye.